For that, we'll watch out for that press conference. But moving on, Delta Corp is the big loser in trade after it got a GST demand notice of 16,800 crore rupees. Also, 1.7 crore shares worth 236 rupees have already changed hands in a block deal. The stock is lower by 18%. Mangalam is here to first tell us more about this GST demand notice that Delta Corp has received.
Well, I don't know whether it's clever juxtaposition or just pure coincidence that we talk about India's largest casino player being sent a GST demand notice just after we discuss, possible extension of trading in F&O itself. But be that as it may, they've told the exchanges over the weekend that they've received GST notices worth nearly 17,000 crores in two forms. One of them is a direct notice of 11,140 crores for Delta Corp itself. The second one is for three subsidiaries of the company worth nearly 5,700 odd crores. This GST demand is for a period between June 2017 to about March 2022 itself. So over a 5-year period, the GST demand is close to 17,000 odd crores. On its part, the company said that the GST demand is based on gross value bet and not gross gaming value. So as a result of which, there is a bit of a discrepancy out there. And also, they've said that these above notices and tax demands are arbitrary and contrary to the law. What is the company likely to do going forward? With all the legal remedies available to them, they will pursue them and challenge these tax demands itself. The stock has corrected in today's trading session, not just today. In fact, over the last few months or so, we've seen near halving of the stock. One was on account of the post-GST Council meet announcements that came in, and now this one is a further hammer on the stock. It's also an F&O ban, so trading is limited, but in cash market there were huge volumes, like you pointed out earlier as well. Over 6% equity has changed hands, so it'll be interesting to see what the fund HNI activity on this counter is. But suffice to say, despite today's down move, not a lot of people will perhaps look at Delta Corp in the immediate future, perhaps on account of regulatory overhang going forward.
Okay, all right, Mangalam, thank you so much for joining us. So that's Delta Corp down 17.5% as we speak. So we'll take this forward because this has been an ongoing issue, GST on online gaming, be it skilled or otherwise. So we have a panel discussion slated for us. Tax Counsel Rohan Shah is joining us to discuss more on this, and we'll have other guests as well. Rohan, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, Delta Corp in its regulatory filing has said that this is not only a company issue, but this is an industry issue and something that we've been highlighting as well. But they do say that the company has been legally advised that the DG notice and the tax demand is arbitrary and contrary to law, and company will seek legal remedies. But considering whatever changes we did see earlier in the GST meet outcome that had come by, do you think there are still legal remedies available, or this is something that they'll have to go ahead and deposit with the government?
No, I think quite clearly, they would be on good legal ground, and for 3 or 4 reasons. We have the law, as it is, which is supposed to be operational till the 1st of October, and there is a new amended law, which is then coming in from the 1st of October. In terms of the law as is, which is from the July of 17, to now, very clearly the two issues in contention are, one, if these are games of skill, and there are a series of Supreme Court judgments to support, for example, that rummy is a game of skill, then from that perspective, can there be a tax at all? And there is already a judgment of the Bangalore High Court in the case of Gamescraft to effectively say that it's a game of skill, and the demand in that case was not sustainable. The second and alternate argument is that even if it is taxable, what should be the value? Now, the value typically must be the value which is paid as consideration for service. And what the industry has consistently been saying is that it is only what is collected and retained towards the service by the casino or by the platform, which should be taxed. So they say that it's the gross gaming value which should effectively be taxed, which also is supported by a series of Supreme Court judgments in other facts, but all of them saying that you can only tax the consideration for the service. The department wants to tax the gross bet value, which is, of course, much, much higher. And there seems to be no basis in the law to really adopt that. In the law as it is today, the proposed amendment of the law will potentially allow the government, and I'm sure those amendments may also see challenge, but if the amendments came through, they have provisions to say that the entire amount deposited is what effectively could be taxed. So really, if we see, the department's case is based on not the law as it is today, but the law as it sort of might be going forward. So I think legally, the industry will have really solid ground, to my mind, in terms of dealing with it. First, on taxability, which is the game of skill versus chance, and second, on the valuation itself. There are, of course, a series of other arguments, but I think these two would be the fundamental arguments.
Rohan, one would assume that any changes which have been made would be prospective in terms of the taxation. But the demand notice is for prior periods. Do you want to just quickly explain that to us?
Yes, so you're absolutely right that, the law is pretty well settled that if you have a retrospective amendment, it must be specific, and absent a specific retrospectivity, all tax provisions are only prospective. And there's a series of Supreme Court judgments on that. Now, what seems to have happened here is that the department is saying the issue has been long debated. And what we now say is clarificatory. And the Revenue Secretary's statement post the last GST Council meeting also seems to suggest that the department sees this as being retrospective or really clarificatory of the law as it always was. If we now see these intimations which have come, these are not show cause notices, they are intimations to say, would you like to pay or not, which will be followed by a show cause. They don't state a set of reasons, but one believes that, they will be adopting the law, which is the law which is still to come in. So to my mind, you have a completely new set of provisions proposed. A lot of the empowerment to tax, whether it is the basic tax or the empowerment on treating deposit as value, is only in the amended law. The amended law rightly should only apply prospectively. So, how these notices will sustain is obviously something to be seen, but one can expect that, department for the moment is going to issue as many notices as they can.
Okay, all right. So we also have Pratik Jain of PwC joining us to continue this discussion. Pratik, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, we've been discussing this issue that the gaming industry has been facing. First up, what's your take on the intimation notice that Delta Corp has received? Rohan has been telling us that the industry has a solid legal ground. But the big question mark has been on the value of the service. While the department had been saying that if you buy chips for, say, 100 rupees, you'll have to pay GST on that. But what Delta Corp is saying, it has to be on the service. Maybe if the platform service fee is around 10 rupees, you have to pay GST on that. Do you think there's still some legal recourse available for the industry and Delta Corp? Because the stock is down 20% as we speak.
I think Rohan has explained very clearly the legality of it, right? So there are issues which are connected issues, whether the rate should be 28% or 18%, that's generally one issue. Because whether it's a game of skill, whether it's a game of chance, that's always a debate. And I'm talking about the industry as such, not really for a company. Another, which is a major issue, is whether it should be in the gross revenue, which I take, or the commission or the gaming fees, or the fee that I charge ultimately. Right? Here, the department's view is that it should be on gross and not on the net. That means that whatever chips I buy at the time of playing, or in case of online gaming, let's say 10 of us contribute 1,000 rupees, and then 50 rupees is the commission of the platform, the remaining is redistributed. The view is that entire 1,000 should be taxed, right, at 28%. Now, as Rohan said, we see this as a major change in law, which is not yet effective, and the center has already passed the law, the states will pass the law, and it will become effective at some point in time. The current set of demands or notices that we're talking about are for the previous period, starting from 1st of July 2017, let's say March 22 or thereabouts. And therefore, the question really is that can it be seen as retrospective, this change? And there, I think there are some grounds available to the industry to argue that it should not be retrospective. It should be prospective once the law becomes effective. But obviously,
Right.
these are issues which are subject of interpretation, and given the amount involved, we see it settling at a Supreme Court level many years from now. I mean, we don't see a very early resolution to some of these disputes.
Okay, that's not, I mean, a very sort of palatable kind of thing, but yeah, I mean that's the way many things have panned out. So take that point, Pratik. Just a quick, the basic basis for challenge from the company side will be the retrospective nature of this thing, not how the tax is to be collected, right?
Yes, so the challenge, and I'm sure that they are sort of building in that all those differences, is to say that what ought to be taxed under GST is my income or whatever I made, like a commission or whatever my service fee was, and not the gross gaming revenue. That was not the intent. And the fact that you've brought in this amendment now further seems to suggest that it's not was about to be taxed or should not have been taxed like this earlier. And of course, being an indirect tax, typically these taxes are passed on to the customers. And now, of course, the companies will not have any ability to pass on to the customer because it pertains to the past. And therefore, I think that would be the primary argument.
So you pass the amendment. We think it is unfair, but apply the taxes from the date of the amendment and not before that, right? That's that's likely to be the argument from the company side, right? We get that. Okay.
Okay, all right. Pratik, thank you so much for joining us, and Rohan as well for explaining to us that what could be the measures going forward for Delta Corp as well. So that remains the big issue, whether it will be levied on the service or the gross revenue. That remains to be seen as well. We'll do one thing. With that, we'll slip into a short break. Up next, we'll discuss what's buzzing in the commodity space with Manisha Gupta.